better off than you were, say, 16 years ago. And the policies in the legislature have been catering to the large out-of-state corporations for campaign contributions. It's gone on too long. It's time that working people are in the room when decisions are made in our state. And as the next governor of the state of Mississippi, that's what I intend to do. Keep working people at the front. Put families, working families first.
Tate Reeves' campaign is really going after you. Have been for quite some time. What's your response to all the attacks coming from the Reeves campaign?
You know, they're going to do these attacks all the way through the election, and that's just part of it. We have to deal with that. But I mean, I'm seeing this is encouraging to see how many Republicans and Democrats encourage me to run for governor. So I see people want to change, and those are the things I've mentioned today, the contract with working people today that I intend to do and put forward, and I think that'll carry the day in November.
Do you have a response to that Y'all Politics article that's talking about you are using $100,000 or have used for an office space?
I hadn't seen it, so I really can't comment on it. I got bad hearing.
What are some things you want?
Well, I think we need to cut taxes on working people instead of giving it away to large out-of-state corporations. That's what we've been doing the last several years. One of those areas is just on grocery tax. You know, the sales tax on groceries. Now we've got to make our cities and counties whole in doing that. But you know, that's one of the things. We've got to clean up government. We've got to stop all of this waste that's going on by friends that. By their friends who come in and give campaign contributions to get state contracts. And so by cleaning up government, by working toward the whole spectrum from pre-K education to teachers' pay to community colleges and our colleges, and providing training to our workers, to accepting them $1.2 billion a year to keep our rural hospitals open in our state, for education in general, and keeping our children here through working with job training so that our young people aren't leaving the state at such an alarming rate, building our roads and bridges. The votes are in the legislature to do those things. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think we could get it done with the same group in the legislature we have right now.
General Hood, now, you've been working largely out of Houston. If you were to be elected governor, would you
I don't think you're press. I think you're one of those bloggers. If any media, legitimate media have a question, I'll be glad to try to answer.
General Hood, I'm going to defend her right to ask you that question.
Yeah.
So I'll ask it. You've been working out of Houston. There's been a report this morning that you spent about $100,000 on your office in Houston. Have the taxpayers gotten their money's worth out of it?
I hadn't seen the report you're talking about, but as far as that office, we've had one on the coast. We've got one in North Mississippi. There are other elected officials that have offices. Northeast Mississippi is just as important to our state as Jackson is, and so yes, the taxpayers get their worth out of having offices in different parts of the state. They can go take care of business in other parts of the state.
If you were elected, would you be living in Jackson full time, or would you still try and work part time out of Chickasaw County?
I'll have to deal with where we live. Certainly, Jackson's a full-time job as governor. AG's a full-time job. I'm working day and night, every day and night, weekends and so forth. So there's no question about how many hours I work. I don't think.
General, you talked about people giving state contracts to their contributors. Can you cite an example of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at the legislation that's tried to go through in the legislature. I mean, just for example, there was a $50,000 campaign contribution in the fall, and there was legislation by the hospitals that wanted to compete with the others for the Medicaid contract. I say the more the merrier if they can do it cheaper. You know, that never got out of the Senate. Those are examples of where not necessarily a contract, but then you look at Medicaid. There's so many areas where we've privatized things. Look at the prisons example. I mean, I've been rounding up money that they've given out to their buddies in these contracts, and they get campaign contributions. I mean, you don't get $7 million in campaign contributions unless you're selling the taxpayers of the state of Mississippi out.
You mentioned the access road or frontage road. Do you have an update on that investigation that you had announced last summer?
We've still got some more interviews to do. We're still going to work on that, and we'll have an announcement on that sometime when we finish. It's just taking more time than I anticipated because there wasn't cooperation from the legislature. The agencies involved certainly have provided emails and information, and we'll deal with that later on.
General Hood, considering the cost that it takes to drag records out of government bodies in Mississippi, the cost that a requester has to pay, why do you think making legislator emails open to the public is going to make them any more accessible?
Well, just take the list of those people who buy them dinner, you know, and who come up and lobby them for legislation. That list ought to be put on every night during the legislative session. That's something that we can do. They can hire somebody to accumulate them for those who want to write them down on hard copies. They can upload them. But people need to know, especially during the legislation.
You're talking about like lobbyist disclosure forms?
So that people, it's a little of both. It's open records and forms, so that people know who are paying for our legislation. These corporations that are giving money, campaign contributions, we got to put a stop to that. That's what's controlling our government instead of the people. And so there's once you have sunlight, and you in the media know this, once you a lot of these abuses that are occurring in our state, they happen in Washington, they happen elsewhere, but we're going to put a stop to it here in our state.
Does someone in government need to be keeping a closer eye on those types of disclosures, though? I mean, other than just posting them and hoping the media or someone spots possible issues or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, they put that over in the Ethics Commission. They don't give them any money. They don't want it enforced, as far as our contributions. I think there needs to probably be more enforcement. But I just think by requiring them to put things up on the internet so people can see them, rather than having to dig them out like you're talking about, where you had to pay to get copies of email and text.
I wrote a $198 check to the State Department of Education yesterday.
Yeah. Well, some of it is attorney-client privilege. I know that. So some lawyers got to sift through them. So there are some difficulties there. But the legislature needs to not exempt themselves. They need to be just like an alderman in Houston, Mississippi, or the attorney general, or anybody in the executive branch in state government. They ought to be subject to the Open Records Act so that people know who's lobbying them, who's paying, who's contributing, so you can see who made a contact with the legislator, and then they turn around and got legislation where they killed a bill.
How much would it cost to roll back the sales tax on groceries?
I don't know the exact number of what it'll cost, but we'll have to make the cities whole. And part of that internet sales tax money should have been going an additional to the cities as well, so we can cover those and make the cities whole on taxes. A lot of this stuff, though, are things that we will be rolling out. This is just our initial first step of announcing our general principles of what we're going to do to help working people. You know, ask a question. All right. Okay. All right. Well, thank y'all.